Rain hammered the tin roof hard enough to swallow the rotor thrum. Night vision green washed the one-room clinic, a mosaic of cots, oxygen tanks, handprints in flaking paint. Captain Mara Ellis, USMC, pressed a gloved finger to her ear. Raven 2, this is Overlord. Execute. Splash window T-90. Her throat tasted like pennies. A child coughed beneath a wool blanket. The boy's mother, eyes blown wide, held up an inhaler like a white flag. SEAL Chief Dalton ghosted through the doorway, breath steady, rifle tucked, laser cold. Clock's running, Captain, he whispered. Ellis scanned. No rifles, no plate carriers, only a metal tray, a cracked nebulizer mask, a hand-drawn house taped to the wall. She keyed the mic. Overlord negative PID on HVT, non-combatants present, abort, static, then steal. You are not command. Confirm execute. Dalton's jaw flexed. The team waited on her look. The boy wheezed, the inhaler hissed. Outside, a Reaper's engine sang like a distant saw. Ellis shrugged off her plate carrier, slid it over the boy's ribs, and stood between him and the window. Then log it, she said, voice low. Log me. Dalton flicked to Team Net. Raven 2 copies Ellis, holding, no fire. Boots shifted, rifles settled. A line that wasn't meant to bend, bent. On the wall, the drawing fluttered in the draft, stick figures under a crooked sun, while the laser spot crept toward it like a second, colder star. 72 hours earlier, Fob Guardian Rain sawed at the HESCO walls and turned the motor pool into a shallow mirror. Captain Mara Ellis checked the seals of her radio pouch, then pressed her thumb into a dog-eared map until the paper dimpled. The ops tent smelled of canvas, coffee gone mean, and the warm plastic breath of electronics. Raven 2, saddle up, Chief Dalton called, voice low enough to be a habit, not a performance. Helmets bobbed past, rifles shouldered in a choreography that made space without giving any. A few eyes flicked to the Marine captain in coyote brown, rank tabs neat, sleeves taped against the weather. Ellis stepped beside the mission board. One ad, she said. The pen in her fingers stopped tapping. We hit Route Blue, Market Alley, then we stop at the clinic. I want a 3-minute look at civilian flow. It's a protected site. We confirm baseline before we start bending patterns. Dalton's cheek twitched as if at a private joke. We're not your tour group, Captain. ROE is not a tour, she said. RO, positive ID required. No fires in proximity to protected infrastructure without on-site confirmation of no civilians. We ground truth it now. We move faster later. A beat. Rain thickened. Vargas, the breacher, rolled a shoulder. 3 minutes, Dalton said. You own them. If ISR slips, you explain it to Overlord. Ellis nodded once. The pen started tapping again. The rhythm steadied her breath. They pushed through the wire into streets that held the rain like regret. Kids hopped gutters. A moped hissed past with 2 sacks of flour and no muffler. On a wall, a hand-painted sign of a blue cross bled into stucco. The clinic. Her chest tightened. A memory tried to surface. Dirt road, a man's arm, the white flash of a canister mistaken for a tube. But she kept the image unfocused, like a star you only see from the corner of your eye. 2 up, eyes out, Dalton murmured. The team fanned. Ellis approached the doorway with her interpreter, Kareem, a student's backpack slung over his jacket like an old habit. Inside, iodine and damp wool. A generator coughed. A machine answered with a thin, intermittent hiss. A child sat on a cot, an inhaler clutched in both hands like a talisman. The mother's scarf was the color of river rock. Kareem spoke. The woman's answer came soft and quick. Ellis watched lips, shoulders, eyes, the micro-tremors that tell truth better than words. No flinches toward corners, no cut eyes to a back room. Just the guarded calculation of someone who needs you and fears you in the same breath. 3 minutes, Captain. Dalton's voice threaded in from the hall. Not impatient, just a string pulled taut. 2, Ellis replied. She noted exits, the narrow alley out back where a gurney could scrape through, a rack of crutches that could become clutter under panic. Kareem, ask about curfew. Patients at night? The mother's hands drew a small house in the air, then 2 fingers like legs walking after the last call to prayer. Kareem's eyebrows pinched. She says sometimes, yes, when the day is dangerous. Ellis marked it, not just a clinic, a shelter when roads went bad. Tell her if she hears the phrase, gray sky, green field, she walks out the back with anyone breathing. We will not block the alley. Kareem hesitated. This makes her a mother with a plan, Ellis said. He translated. The woman's mouth trembled, then set. Outside, ISR crackled. Overlord to Raven 2, be advised, tasking window tightens. HVT pattern assessed near your grid. Stand by for execute matrix. Dalton's eyes found Ellis's. The weight in them wasn't hostility. It was arithmetic. Time, risk, trust. You heard the man. Ellis capped her pen. Then we're done here. She turned to the mother, raised her palms in the universal promise of not taking more than she'd already taken. The child's cough came high and brittle, like a hinge that needed oil. Back on the street, rain softened to a mist that made everything look further than it was. The team flowed toward Route Blue. Boots whispered over gravel. The clinic door clicked shut behind them, a heartbeat late. Ellis keyed her mic to the command net. Overlord Guardian Element Notes, protected site at grid 14S. She read it clean. ROE reminder. No fires prox clinic without on-site civilian clearance. Static. Copy, the voice said, flat as a table. Dalton matched her stride. You always quote ROE like scripture? When it keeps us honest, she said. And when it slows us down? She watched a gutter spill over, water freckling her sleeve. Then we learn where to be fast, she said. And where to be right. A breath, maybe his, maybe the weather, loosened. 3 minutes well spent, he said, almost like he meant to keep it inside. They moved. The city breathed. Somewhere behind them, a generator coughed again, and the hiss of a machine kept time with the rain. The market alley ran like a wet fuse, tarps sagging with rain, onions gleaming, a radio coughing out a love song that never reached its chorus. Captain Mara Ellis kept her rifle low and her eyes busy, counting what didn't fit. 3 men sharing one umbrella but not each other's gaze. A shutter freshly painted in a block of peeling walls. A scooter idling too long with nobody on it. Raven 2, be advised ISR window shortens by 20. The net rasped. Overlord out. Time tried to climb into her chest. She pressed the pen clip into her palm until it bit. Ahead, Chief Dalton lifted 2 fingers, and the stack flowed around a fruit stall like water finding its own angles. Kareem murmured greetings. A boy darted past with a tin of tea, eyes wide and perfectly uninterested in them. The kind of not looking that means life is still possible. Good. The Blue Cross sign at the clinic's corner had turned darker in the rain. The generator coughed again, answered by the thin, steady hiss Ellis had clocked earlier. She paused under a sheet of plastic that funneled drips into a barrel, the rhythm too even to be rain. Oxygen, or a nebulizer. A system you only hear when you're close, when it matters. Captain, Dalton said, shadowing her pause. Not a rebuke, A weight check. Mark it, she said. She keyed her mic to the admin net. Guardian to Raven Tuck. Log site Bravo Blue as protected. Clinic with active respiratory patients. Copy Guardian. Protected status logged. A clerk's voice replied, bored as a metronome. The word protected felt like a stake in wet earth. Not glamorous, but the boundary that keeps you from sliding. Two men at the corner watched the team over a chessboard. One finger tapped a knight that never moved. Vargas breathed, slow through his nose. You see that? I see a game that doesn't like witnesses, Ellis said. She stepped wide enough to give them space, narrow enough to own the lane. Kareem, tell them we'll stay out of their way. Kareem did. One of the men raised a palm, neither welcoming nor warning. Enough. The radio hissed again. Overlord to Raven 2. Recommend accelerate. HVT pattern trending west of your grid. Ellis felt the team's stride want to lengthen. Her calf muscles tightened to keep pace honest. Fast is a habit. Right is a discipline. Raven 2 copies, Dalton said, neutral. Then on Team Net. Hold lines. Guardian owns the 3 minutes. 3 minutes again. She took them like oxygen. A scooter coughed to life and rolled toward the alley bottleneck. The rider's left heel dragged, toe twitching, nervous or ill-trained. Vargas's rifle rose a degree. Dalton's hand hovered near a signal. Ellis raised hers first, palm down. She pointed, heel, toe, the twitch. Small tells. Not a bomber's choreography. More like someone bad at clutches. She angled her body to give the scooter a corridor that wouldn't feel like a trap. The rider wobbled past, eyes glued to the slick ground. A crate of bread buns steamed in the rain, and for a beat, the whole alley smelled like a bakery trying to survive a flood. Kareem whispered, "You make room. They make room." "Sometimes," she said. The clinic door opened. The same mother from earlier stepped out with an empty thermos. She didn't glance at them, but her shoulder tightened as if bracing for a wave. Ellis kept her gaze soft, her posture smaller than her kit allowed. The woman moved to the barrel, filled the thermos, and went back in. The blue cross darkened another shade. "Overlord to Raven 2. ISR lacing grid 6-1. Ellis keyed the command net. "Guardian to Overlord. Confirm protected site within 50 meters of your grid. CDE projected?" A beat. Then, "Guardian. CDE within tolerance if execute immediate. Not if you count the hiss. Not if you count the 3-minute lives moving through this rain." She switched to Team Net. "We finish the sweep. Then we move west." Dalton's jaw worked, sharpening a thought. "Copy," he said. No editorial. She felt something small click into place like a pin seating. They cut through a courtyard where a tarp had become a ceiling and a family's whole world fit under it. Pots, a metal crib, a battery light bruised to low. The father's hands were black with machine oil. His eyes flicked not to their rifles, but to the oxygen tank strapped to a gurney just inside the clinic. He knew which danger mattered this minute. Ellis stopped. She took out a marker and drew a rectangle on her sleeve map. Evac lane, rear alley. "Vargas," she said, "if we have to pull them, this is the path. No obstacles. Crutches get tossed if they jam us. Copy?" "Copy." She keyed admin again. "Guardian to Raven Tuck. Update. Bravo Blue protected. Evac lane designated rear alley northbound." Logged. ISR buzz deepened, clouds pressing low like a lid. The market's hum picked back up, as if it had ever stopped. Folks learned to live under noise. Dalton's shoulder brushed hers as the team reformed on Route Blue. "You keep saying what no one wants to write down," he said, voice for her and the rain. That clinic makes everything messy. It makes everything true, she said. They turned west. Boots met puddles. The alley narrowed behind them, then opened into a street where the air smelled like wet copper and old diesel. The weight of looking settled in her shoulders the way a pack does. Heavy until you forget it's there, and then you're strong because you carried it. She did not look back at the Blue Cross. She had already logged it. The record would look back for her. The pharmacy's shutter groaned down halfway, making the room a metal throat that held its breath. Shelves leaned with bandages and bottles no one dusted when the rain came. A bare bulb buzzed like a fly that refused to die. Captain Mara Ellis stood where the light hit the ledger on the counter, not the man across from her. He favored one leg, the left, weight settling, lifting, settling. He smelled of stale tobacco and camphor oil. Kareem stood to Ellis's right, hands open, voice soft in the small air. The man tapped a palm with 2 fingers. Pills. He wants medicine first, Kareem said. Ellis let the line hang. A generator thumped outside. The shutter vibrated with each beat. She saw the clinic's blue cross in her head, the way water darkened it, the way the child's inhaler hissed like a patient machine. Compassion shouldn't be currency, but sickness didn't read policy. She unzipped a pouch and set a sealed med pack on the counter. Ibuprofen, antibiotics, a blister of inhaler cartridges. The plastic crackled. This goes regardless, she said. No trade. She looked at Kareem. Translate it exactly. He did. The man's eyes flicked, surprised, then suspicious, because surprise in this place wore a hole where trust ought to be. Ellis slid a pen across the ledger. Sign for receipt. She called it what it was, a record. Her hand stayed flat on the paper until the pen scratched a name that might have been real. Guardian to Raven 2. Dalton's voice crackled in her ear. Status? She keyed her PTT low. Working source, noise steady. Copy, keep it tight. The man tapped the blister again. Kareem spoke, and words arced between them. The man coughed a laugh with no humor in it and rolled up his sleeve. An angry rash rode his forearm like a map. Ellis reached for an alcohol swab, tore it open. The sharp scent cut through camphor, clean and clinical. She dabbed, careful. The man's jaw loosened a notch he hadn't noticed he'd clenched. Tell him, she said. Aid isn't payment. It's duty. Kareem translated. The man's mouth pressed thin. Then he nodded once, the way a door concedes to a hand that doesn't shove. He leaned in and shaped syllables with care, as if the room itself were an informant. Kareem listened, eyes narrowed. He says the man you seek uses a different name after dark. He comes to the clinic when the muezzin's last echo dies. He pays in phone cards and asthma medicine. He keeps his right hand hidden in a scarf. Kareem hesitated. He says the right hand is burned. Burn scars. A habit, a tell you can't rehearse away. Ellis wrote the alias, block letters that wouldn't smudge in the damp. Her stomach tightened. Transactional mercy still reeked of compromise. But the swab's sting lingered on her fingers, and that felt like a line held. Proof, she said. The man shrugged, palm up, the native gesture for fate. He mimed a pulse to the shutter's beat. After prayer, Kareem said. Always after prayer. Her radio ticked. Overlord to Raven 2, ISR window compressing. Execute matrix pending. Ellis tasted the word execute like a coin on her tongue. She kept her voice level. Guardian copies. She looked at the man. If there's a child inside when he comes, if anyone needs out, tell the nurse these words. She wrote on a scrap. Gray sky, green field. Back alley, northbound, Kareem translated. The man nodded again. Faster now. Either belief or relief. Maybe both. He slipped the pack into a ragged satchel, thumbed the pen line on the ledger, as if testing whether ink could hold weight. Ellis sealed the used swab in a zip bag and tucked it away. Evidence of nothing and something. Payment for medicine, the old part of her mind whispered. No, she answered it. Proof of care. She keyed Team Net. Raven 2, Guardian. Source indicates HVT alias Halid after curfew. Pattern of life. Post-Audon clinic visits, scarfed right hand, trades phone cards for asthma meds. Dalton came back quick. Copy Halid alias, post-Audon pattern. A pause. You good with the ledger? Signed and bagged. Aid under CA authority. No quid pro quo. Another pause that was almost a breath. Wilco. The man adjusted his sleeve. Rain accelerated. The bulb's filament hummed like a held note. Ellis closed the ledger, felt the rough board under the paper bite through to her palm. She nodded once to the man, once to Kareem. At the shutter, she drew in the smell of wet metal and streets about to get mean. The market's murmur seeped in as the slit widened. Onions, diesel, human damp, the restless city. She stepped out. Guardian to Overlord, she said on command net. Update, potential PID markers gained. Request ISR linger over clinic grid post-Audon for ground confirmation. The answer came clipped. Stand by. Approved for limited linger. She let the limited part pass through and out. Enough to make a plan. Enough to make the next right choice. Behind her, the shutter rattled shut and sealed the medicine into the dark. Night pressed low over Fob Guardian until the tent lights felt surgical. The projector coughed a grainy river of green across the map board. The UAV feed hissed like a snake that never tired. Captain Mara Ellis stood with her notebook open and the pen clip digging a crescent into her palm. Overlord to Raven 2, the speaker rasped. Timeline compression. Execute matrix pending post-Audon. The word pending slid a chill under her collar. Dalton cut her a look. Steady, unsugared. The team clustered in a half-moon, Vargas rolling a shoulder, Iceman with the AO map folded to a knife, the comms man dialing gain until the hiss thinned. Ellis stepped closer to the table where the NSL overlay sat under acetate. The clinic's grid winked in red. Protected site. Words on paper. Lives behind them. She keyed command net. Guardian for Overlord. Request ISR dwell extension over grid, Bravo Blue from H1 to H+2, tied to ROE. A beat. State RO basis. She let the pen breathe in her fingers. ROE. Positive ID required. No strike procs protected infrastructure absent on-site civilian clearance. Request ISR to confirm non-combatant absence during window. Dalton's eyebrow ticked. Approval or warning, she couldn't tell. The projector threw a thermal ghost across the alley, where steam from a pot rose like a second person. Positive ID is not a ghost. Guardian. Overlord came back, tin sharp. Dwell assets limited. Risk matrix tolerates CDE low. CDE low was still a number you had to carry. She pictured the oxygen hiss. Numbers didn't. She kept her voice level. Request tasking under Annex K. Protected sites confirmatory ISR prior to fires. The words felt like armor plates locking. Will provide ground clearance call or hold. Silence pooled, thick as the coffee gone to tar at her elbow. Kareem stood just outside the fan of light, hands inside his sleeves like a man staying warm with patience. Dalton's whisper edged her ear. You're writing yourself into the blast door, he said. That's the point, she answered. The speaker crackled. Guardian, Dwell approved. 48 hours. ROE tie-in acknowledged. Your ground clearance required prior to kinetic. Relief arrived with a metallic tang like biting your lip. Small pain, big meaning. She exhaled and tasted the tent. Canvas, ozone from hot electronics, sweat seamed into nylon. Guardian copies Dwell 48. Ground clearance required. On Team Net, Dalton kept it even. We own confirmation. No push unless Captain Ellis calls it clean. He didn't look at her when he said it, which somehow made it steadier. The feed jumped. Heat blooms dripped off roofs, cats like comets. In the clinic's rectangle, the thermal went cool, then warm, then cool, people in, people out. Life, not a target pack. Ellis flipped to a new page and drew the alley the way her boots remembered it. The bucket, the crutch rack, the gurney wheel that needed oil. She boxed Evac Lane, north, and underlined twice. The pen dug a groove she could follow in the dark. Captain. Iceman tilted his chin toward a blip edging the grid. Vehicle stop and start? Could be a courier? Or someone who hates hills, Vargas murmured. Ellis tracked the stutter on the feed and waited for the human detail that would make it honest. A second figure, a load carried wrong, a pause that meant nerves not planning. Nothing, just a bad clutch and a steeper grade than pride. No call, she said. Overlord to Raven 2, execute matrix finalized. Window opens T-90. Clock, claws out now. She keyed admin. Raven talk, annotate, Dwell approved 48. Fires near Bravo Blue require Guardian ground clearance. Logged, the clerk said. That bored metronome again. May he always be bored, she thought. Bored clerks meant nobody bled. Dalton leaned into the board, fingertip on their ingress route. We stage here, hard corner by the cobbler's stall. If it goes bad, Vargas pulls the evac lane. Captain, you sure you want our leash tied to your call? She studied his face, lines carved more by weather than rank. I want our leash tied to the hiss of a machine that keeps a child breathing, she said. He chewed on that and gave a single, slow nod. Copy. Rain ratcheted up, needling the tent roof until the noise became a surface they all had to push through. Someone coughed. The projector fan made the map ripple, and the red square of the clinic seemed to flutter like cloth in wind. Ellis keyed her mic again, throat dry. Guardian to Overlord, for the record, we will not execute fires without on-site confirmation of 0 non-combatants at Bravo Blue. The speaker answered with a tone that said, a box got checked somewhere men never saw the ground. Record received. The team began that quiet choreography of readiness. Batteries swapped, magazines pressed, nods traded like fuses seated. Ellis capped her pen. The groove on the page shone where she'd pressed too hard. 48 hours, enough to be careful, barely. She closed the notebook and felt the paper's soft grit under her thumb. Armor you could carry, not heavy until you needed it. Outside, the rain eased. Inside, the clock didn't. Dusk slid down the alley like oil. The muezzin's last echo threaded the rain and thinned into the generator cough by the clinic. Captain Mara Ellis adjusted the strap bite on her shoulder and felt the map's groove under her thumb, evac lane, north, pressed into the paper like a promise. Raven 2 moving route gray. Dalton breathed on Team Net. Eyes high, angles clean. They drifted past shuttered stalls. A string of bulbs sagged over a cobbler's sign, light puddling in the rain. Kareem kept half a step behind Ellis, his breath even, his silence practiced. Somewhere, water dripped with a metronome's indifference. The first tell was smell. Diesel too fresh for the hour. Then the shape. A sedan nosed into a choke point, hood still ticking heat. Windows too dark. Rear end slightly canted, as if the driver had parked to leave fast. Vargas muttered, "That's a bad idea. Wearing a car." "Hold lines," Dalton said. No one needed to be told twice. Ellis tracked micro-movements. A curtain's edge exhaled, a shadow's shoulder set wrong. The chessboard men from earlier were gone and their absence had weight. Her palm found the pen clip. The urge to fill the space with action rose like a tide. Her radio cracked. "Overlord to Raven 2, execute window in 60, stand by." Time tried to hurry them. She slowed her breathing until the alley's sounds separated. Drip, tick, hiss, each in its own lane. The sedan's trunk had a light scuff where tape had been peeled and relaid. Not a bomb's language, a mechanic's. "Left balcony," Iceman whispered. One silhouette. Ellis saw it. A figure hunched, elbows inside a shawl. No barrel silhouette. No triangle of shoulders you learn to fear. Just a person hugging weather or worry. The balcony rail carried a loop of laundry line and one clothespin that clicked in the wind like a tiny metronome losing time. Her throat tasted of old metal. Another street, another dusk. A man had reached for a canister. A junior her had said the word weapon faster than truth could catch up. The memory's cold hand found her wrist. She put the memory under her boot. "Guardian to Raven 2, she said, voice low. "No PID, hold fire, de-escalate posture. Vargas, pivot to rear alley overwatch. Kareem, low-voiced announce, passing through, keep inside." Dalton's jaw flexed. "Copy hold." No sarcasm, no praise. A choice shared in plain air. Kareem cupped his hands and spoke the phrase soft as rain. Doors didn't slam. A kettle lid snow-globed a puff of steam and settled. The balcony silhouette shifted, not toward them, but away from the rail, as if remembering a pot on a stove. Iceman murmured, "Possible flanker at the sedan's 10. The figure was a smear behind the trunk line, knee cocked like a sprinter. Ellis angled her head. The smear resolved into a boy shouldering a sack that slumped with bread's weight. He'd parked a cart wrong to keep it out of the wet. "Negative hostile," she said. "Cart. Bread." Vargas's breath ticked off a smile he didn't have time for. "Copy. Bread." The sedan's door creaked. A man slid out, palms empty, scarf wrapped thick around the right hand. Her scalp tightened. The detail from the pharmacy ledger pricked like a pin. Scarved right hand. The man kept his gaze at the ground, shouldered the door closed with a hip, and walked not toward them, not toward cover, but toward the clinic with the unthinking pull of habit. He paused under the Blue Cross sign and rubbed his scarfed hand against the wall as if the stucco could sand an itch away. "Possible HVT marker," Iceman said, tension braided into the words. Ellis tasted caution. The marker fit, the picture did not. No escort, no counter-surveillance, no tail wag from ISR calling a confluence. Just a man and the gravity of illness. She keyed command net. "Guardian to Overlord. Visual on scarfed right hand approaching clinic. No hostile indicators. Request delay of fires until ground confirmation post-entry. Guardian, stand by." The pause had teeth. "Negative delay. Execute window remains." Her spine warmed. She looked at Dalton. His eyes asked a question that had no new words in it. "Team posture remains hold," she said, steady into the net. "We are not initiating contact without PID." The sedan man rapped the clinic door with his left knuckles. 3 soft taps. The door opened a hand's width. The mother's profile, river rock scarf. A code passed between people who had traded nights like currency. The man slipped in. The door clicked shut. Ellis's pen found the groove on the map page again and pressed until paper complained. If he's HVT, he just went into a protected site. If he's not, he's another sick human under a blue cross. Both truths could be true until the picture proved one. On the balcony, the clothespin clicked once more, then stilled. Raven 2, she said, the decision hardening into bone. We hold contact. No shot without muzzle source. Vargas, make the rear alley lane real. Clear trash cans, stack crutches. Kareem, prep evac phrase. Wilco, Dalton said. He didn't ask for a second vote. Rain burred the edges of everything. Somewhere beyond the alley, a motorcycle backfired, a single flat crack that made 3 hearts spike and then settle. The alley kept breathing. No ambush, just the echo you get when fear is rehearsed and the night loves to audition. They flowed past the sedan with rifles low, bodies tall. The violence kept inside its box. The clinic's generator coughed, and the oxygen hiss held steady, a line as thin and stubborn as a child's breath. Ellis didn't look up at the balcony again. She'd already chosen who she was with the first hold. The alley had put its test on the table. She had answered. By late afternoon, the rain narrowed to a mist that turned the alley into a breath you could see. The clinic's generator thumped steady, each cough met by the thin, stubborn hiss of oxygen inside. Captain Mara Ellis traced the rear alley with her boot toe, measuring a stretcher's width against trash cans, stacked crates, a rusting bicycle that had become part fence, part memory. Raven 2, hold outer cordon, Chief Dalton said on Team Net. No guns on glass. We keep this quiet. He stood with his back to a wall painted the faded blue of old sky. Vargas posted at the alley mouth, helmet canted, eyes soft and awake. Kareem lingered near the barrel where the clinic mother filled her thermos, his hands visible, voice unused. Ellis unfolded the sleeve map and pinched a corner until it creased, paper bone beneath glove. We are not assaulting a place that keeps people breathing, she said, low enough to carry only to them. We rehearse the evac lane until it's muscle memory. If contact happens anywhere near this building, our first action is movement, not muzzle. Dalton studied her a beat. Say it on the net, Captain. She keyed admin. Guardian to Raven Talk. Directive for Grid Bravo Blue. No dynamic entry or initiated contact within clinic perimeter unless evacuation corridor is staged and manned. Mark evac lane rear alley northbound. Obstacles to be cleared now. Logged, came the metronome voice, bored. Good. 2 boys watched from a doorway, half a soccer ball cupped against one hip like a secret. Their eyes hopped between rifles and the blue cross, calculating which mattered more. Ellis nodded to Kareem. Quiet words. Ask if we can move the bike. Tell them we won't block the door. Kareem spoke. The older boy's chin lifted, brave because smaller eyes were on him. He dragged the bicycle aside. Its chain sighed like something relieved. Vargas, Ellis said, walking the lane. Strip what jams us. Crutches to the left wall. Trash cans to the corner. Keep a shoulder-wide gap. We need 30 inches, minimum. She gestured the measurement. He moved like a man setting a table he planned to eat at. She tapped the clinic door frame with a knuckle and felt the wood's damp give. Kareem, if we have to pull people, cue phrase is the same. He nodded. Gray sky, green field. The phrase fit in the alley like a key that didn't scrape. Ellis checked the alley's bend, where shadow turned too fast and made people look like ideas. She stepped into it and then out, counting how many boots it took to clear. 4 strides, she said, mostly to the page where her pen obeyed. Gurney wheel catches on the third cobble. A woman in a slate scarf watched from a balcony, elbows inside fabric, mouth unreadable. Chlorine drifted from a mop bucket by the clinic door, clean threaded through the damp. The place had the fragile dignity of spaces that heal, practical, bruised, organized around breath. Dalton moved to her shoulder. You know, if this goes loud up the block, we'll be blamed for the echo. We control the echo, she said. We make sure it isn't in here. He worked his jaw, a man sanding thought. Vargas, you're evac 1, he said on Team Net. You flow with the captain's lane. Iceman, you're evac 2 on the bend. No heroics at the door. A figure approached the corner. An old man with a roll of gauze and a dignity that didn't ask permission. Vargas shifted one step to give space. The man nodded to no one in particular and went inside. The door exhaled air that smelled of iodine and wool. Ellis keyed command. Guardian to Overlord, be advised, Bravo Blue evac corridor established. Any kinetic near this grid requires confirmation that corridor is clear and manned. Copy, Guardian. Corridor noted. The voice didn't know what the Yatsu alley smelled like. It didn't have to. She did. She walked the lane again, slower. Her hand brushed the wall where the scarfed man had rubbed earlier, grit under glove the texture of a habit. It wasn't proof of anything but time passing and hands trying to live in it. Run it, she said. 2 liters worth. No noise. Vargas and Iceman moved as if they'd been doing this for months. Down the alley, around the bend, a pivot at the bucket that would otherwise clip a wheel. 30 seconds later, they reappeared, breath even, the path a line cut through water. Dalton nodded. Looks clean. It's clean when it's used, Ellis said. The generator agreed with a 3-beat cough, then steadied. On the balcony, the slate scarf woman retreated, a shadow turning into house. The boys were gone. The half soccer ball waited in a puddle for feet that would find it. Ellis folded the map along its new crease and felt something settle in her chest. Not relief, not yet, but the geometry of a decision made. If the night demanded a price, she'd pay in movement and care before anything louder. Dalton's voice came soft. You've got Vargas, he said. He's yours on evac until this is over. Copy, she said. It landed less like permission than like trust. She pressed her palm to the door 1 second, wood pulse building breath, then stepped back into the lane they had made for mercy. Midnight put a chill on the tent that the projector couldn't burn off. The UAV feed jittered over Ashara like a slow storm, thermal bleaching roofs to bone and carving alleys into riverbeds of black. Captain Mara Ellis stood at the edge of the light with her notebook open, the pen clip pressing a clean crescent into her palm. Overlord to Raven 2, the speaker rasped. Execute matrix opens in 30. Trend confirms pattern near Bravo Blue. The red square they'd named Clinic pulsed on the acetate overlay. Within it, heat signatures ebbed and flared. 2, then 1, then none, like breath held and released. A small, constant glow in the rear corner was the oxygen machine, a steady star in a bad sky. Dalton stood beside her, helmet off, jaw set to neutral. Vargas had a shoulder against the center pole, eyes on the screen but not seduced by it. Kareem, coat zipped to the throat, kept his hands inside his sleeves as if protecting a small fire. On the feed, a figure slipped into view near the alley mouth. The body carried its right arm stiff, wrapped close to the ribs. Ellis felt the tiny nerve spark at the base of her skull. Scarfed right hand. The ledger's whispered tell. The figure paused beneath the cross, a pale square in a dark world, then moved toward the door. Her mouth went dry. "Zoom," she said, too quiet for the net. The sensor operator complied. Pixels grew, edges broke down. The right arm stayed clamped, but the pixels couldn't swear to a scarf or a burn. The head tipped once as if listening for a kettle. "Overlord. Guardian, confirm PID." She keyed command. "Negative positive ID. Candidate marker present. No corroborating indicators. Protected site. Request delay until ground clearance." Static filled the half-second like a held breath. "Guardian, risk matrix tolerates CDE low. Recommend execute." CDE low sounded like math. The hiss in her head sounded like a child counting breaths. She anchored herself with details the camera couldn't give. The bend in the alley where a gurney wheel would catch. The bucket that needed moving. The way the door breathed when opened. She felt the map's groove under her thumb and let it be a rail. "Guardian to Overlord," she said, voice level. "ROE requires positive ID, not probability, and on-site civilian clearance for protected sites. Request ISR linger. We will clear or cancel." The projector fan deepened a note. The figure on the screen lifted the left hand to knock. A sliver of heat widened, the door opening, and then the shape slid inside, swallowed by white. Dalton didn't look at her when he spoke. "If he's our man, he's now in the box that cancels our shot. Or he's a patient who moves the same way every night," she said. The speaker crackled. "Guardian, delay not authorized. Execute window remains." Her tongue tasted metal. She pressed the pen clip harder until the small pain organized the rest. "Guardian acknowledges window." She let 2 heartbeats pass. "Guardian will not clear fires absent on-site confirmation of 0 non-combatants at Bravo Blue." Paper armor, out loud, on the tape. If she got crushed for it, at least the shape of the crush would be honest. A second signature appeared in the corridor, smaller, cooler. Then 2 merged, then parted. People. Not a formation, not a security element. A life doing its midnight arithmetic. Vargas exhaled through his nose. "Heavier footfall pattern when folks are scared," he said to the air. "That's not it." Ellis keyed Team Net. "Raven 2, Guardian. Maintain hold. Be prepared to move for ground clearance on my call. No contact unless muzzle source." "Copy hold," Dalton said. No drag in it. He adjusted the radio gain until the hiss thinned to a ribbon. On the feed, a fleeting line, a laser spot, touched the roofline, then drifted. ISR marking a grid the way a teacher underlines a word you still have to define. She didn't blink. "Overlord, last call for execute." Ellis tasted the word and let it go. "Guardian, no clearance, protected site. Recommend stand down and re-queue post-Audun +30. Silence. Then, "Record your descent, Guardian. Window remains per hire." She wrote the sentence in her notebook in block letters, so it would look like rock later. "No PID, no clearance, protected site." The pen cut clean. She signed her name like a fuse crimped shut. The figure vanished deeper into the clinic's cool rectangle. The steady oxygen glow held its place, patient as a metronome no one could see. Ellis closed her notebook. "We plan the ground check," she said to Dalton. "At gray light, if needed. Vargas owns the lane. Kareem preps the phrase. I want our first move to be a door held open, not kicked." Dalton's jaw shifted, then stilled. "Copy." The projector hummed. The tent breathed. Somewhere outside, a mule brayed once and made the night feel human again. She let that sound be her measure, not the clock on a wall she couldn't touch. The feed rolled on, indifferent. She refused to tell it a truth it hadn't earned. The clinic's hallway held the day's damp like a memory. Iodine, damp wool, and the faint, sweet-sour thread of boiled rice. Captain Mara Ellis let her glove ride the wall without touching it, guiding herself by the texture of flaked paint and the small sigh of a building that had learned to breathe around need. Kareem walked a half-step behind, scarf tucked deep, eyes soft. A kettle clicked in a back room. A cough answered, a child's hinge-squeak cough, and the oxygen hiss took up its patient rhythm again. Ellis felt the pull in her chest ease, the way it did when a machine kept its promise. They stopped in a storage nook where a curtain made privacy out of cloth and hope. The mother stepped through it with a thermos in both hands. The scarf at her hairline matched the gray of the clinic walls, a color that refused drama. Kareem lifted his palms. "We will be quick," he said in her language. "Quiet." Ellis unzipped a pouch and placed a vacuum-sealed med pack on a shelf between a crate of gauze and a box of expired vitamin syrup. "For patients," she said, "not payment." She let Kareem carry the words across. The mother's eyes flicked to the pack, then to Ellis's face, measuring whether the gift carried a hook. Ellis kept her gaze steady and small. She pointed to the back door with 2 fingers, then to the alley's direction, tracing the line of the evac lane in the air like a route drawn on skin. "Gray sky, green field," Ellis said, low. "Those words mean you leave by the back. You take anyone who breathes." Kareem translated. The mother pressed her mouth thin, then nodded once like a curtain conceding wind. She took the med pack with both hands and slid it under the shelf, covering it with a folded towel whose edges had learned to lie flat. "Overlord to Raven 2!" The radio hissed in Ellis's ear, tin and distance. "Window pressure remains." Ellis didn't answer. She kept the net on receive and fixed her attention on the woman's knuckles whitened by the thermos handle. "We will not block your door," she said. "We will move people first." The mother listened like someone measuring the truth by its temperature. She set the thermos down and touched the wall with the side of so. Her hand, a gesture Ellis had seen the scarfed man make, habit routed through pain. The woman leaned in, voice a thread. Kareem tilted toward the words and let them coat his ear before he spoke. She says, "He comes after the last call to prayer. He knocks softly, 3 times. He keeps the right hand under cloth. He sits near the back where the machine is loud." The timing slid into Ellis's notebook in her head before the pen could find it. After the last echo dies. The window narrowed to a line they could hold. "Ask her," Ellis said, "if anyone warns him, if someone watches the corner." Kareem folded the question into the room. The mother's eyes cut to the side, toward the courtyard where boys had played earlier, and back again, apology and calculation crowding the same space. She shook her head, then lifted a shoulder in the native grammar for sometimes. The truth never arrived in parade order. "Tell her," Ellis said. "No one is to speak the phrase except a woman or a child." Layers on the key, fewer hands to copy it, fewer mouths to mimic. Kareem gave it shape. The mother nodded, faster now, a little relief escaping in the breath that fogged the thermos cap. A cart squeaked past outside. The clinic door exhaled and inhaled. The machine hissed steady. Ellis let the sounds stack until they were a chord she knew, then found the discord, the one small rub she could use to tune the night. "If the man with the scarf comes," she said, "and we stand in the alley, we will not point guns at your door." She glanced to Kareem. He split the sentence into pieces that would not cut. The mother studied the Marine captain's face as if reading a map for roads that didn't lie. Then she reached under the shelf, pulled out a child's drawing, stick figures beneath a crooked sun, and pressed it into Ellis's gloved hand. The paper's edge rasped like a match against skin. "For you," Kareem translated, voice softening. "So you remember which door is ours." Ellis slid the drawing into her notebook, behind the page where she had carved a groove. Evac Lane, north. The paper grit steadied her thumb. The radio breathed again. Overlord impatient in a language of clocks. Ellis gave it nothing. She looked at the mother and angled her body smaller than her kit. The way you do when you want someone to keep their breath for themselves. "We will come with words first," she said, then with hands. Kareem shaped the promise. The mother answered with a word Ellis didn't know but understood. The pitch of relief when a plan fits inside a person's life. They slipped back into the hallway. The curtain let them go. In the doorway, Ellis paused, listening to the kettle's click, the child's cough, the machine's metronome, and folded all three into the file where she kept reasons worth getting crushed for. In the alley, rain feathered down, making the air the same cool as the clinic walls. Dalton waited without asking. Ellis gave a single nod that carried timing, code, and the weight of what she'd just owed. "After last call," she said. "Copy," he answered. Nothing more. Enough. The ops tent felt overlit. A square of noon stapled to midnight. The projector hummed, washing the acetate in restless green. Captain Mara Ellis stood at the admin table where the cheap printer sweated heat into damp air. A stack of forms waited, blanks with teeth. "Overlord to Raven 2, the speaker said, voice tin bright. "Threat matrix expanded. Regional coordination recommends execute within window." Ellis tasted the word recommends and felt how it meant expects. She set her notebook down, flipped to the page where she'd carved a groove, then slid a new sheet into the printer tray. Dalton stood a pace off, helmet clipped to his belt, eyes neutral. His presence worked like ballast. Vargas leaned on the center pole, hands loose. Kareem hovered at the edge of light, a shadow that listened. Ellis keyed command net. "Guardian for Overlord, confirm, protected site at Bravo Blue with active patients. Positive ID remains unconfirmed. Request delay to ground clear post Audun plus 30. Static, then the steel. Negative delay. Execute authorized under CDE low." She let her jaw hinge once, slow. The printer chirped. A status light blinked like a patient with an unhelpful pulse. She brought the mic close. "Guardian acknowledges hire's authorization. Be advised, ground element will not clear fires absent on-site confirmation of 0 non-combatants at protected site." A pause you could pour a career into. "Record your descent, Guardian. Window stands." "Copy," she said. The words slid out clean, small, exact. She typed fast, faster than the printer deserved, hands steady from practice, not calm. "Sub J, row descent, Annex K reference, grid Bravo Blue." She wrote in blocks that would look like rock when read by people who'd never smell iodine or generator ozone. No positive identification of HVT at time of order. Protected medical infrastructure within strike radius. On-site civilian clearance not achieved. Ground element will not provide clear call per ROE Annex K until civilians are verified away from grid. She signed, rank neat, date time group exact. Ink made its own sound on fiber, quiet, decisive. She scanned the tent while the printer clattered, memory adding smells to the moment so she wouldn't misremember later. Canvas, hot plastic, a rind of coffee gone bitter, boots drying in a line. Dalton watched the page feed out. You understand how many people that irritates, he said, almost conversational. I'm counting different people, she said. He nodded once, a weight shifting to the right shelf. She keyed Team Net. Raven 2, Guardian. Execute window acknowledged. Guardian will withhold ground clear until non-combatant absence is confirmed on site. Maintain hold. Prep for evac posture on my call. Copy, maintain hold. Dalton said, the evenness an act of leadership, not a lack of opinion. On the projector, the clinic cooled and warmed, with the pace of breath. A laser glance traced the roof and slithered off, the camera's version of impatience. Ellis printed 2 more copies of The Descent, one for Tiuka, one for her pocket. Paper armor worked better layered. She carried a copy to the admin clerk, a corporal with ink on his fingertips, and boredom for a shield. Log this, she said. He skimmed, blinked, squared it with a ruler he didn't need. Logged, he said. Stamp thumped paper, date, time, a sound that felt like a door bar setting in place. Overlord to Guardian, the speaker snapped. Acknowledge receipt of execute packet. Ellis pressed the transmit key. Guardian copies execute packet. Be advised, no clearance at Bravo Blue until ground team confirms 0 non-combatants. Your position is recorded, the voice said, cool as a checklist. Proceed per tasking. Per tasking. 2 words that fit anywhere and belonged nowhere. She returned to the board, drew a thin arrow from the rear alley bend to the street that led out toward the river. The path a gurney would take if someone called the phrase that wasn't supposed to exist. She underlined evac lane, north until the pen bled a little. Dalton stepped in, finger to the ingress. We stage here, he said. If higher pushes a shot outside your clearance, our presence cancels it. Friendly and grid, she said. ROE clause does what it says. She watched that land in his eyes and become practice, not theory. Kareem murmured from the edge, the mother will hear the call to prayer soon. Then we will hear it, Ellis said. The printer went silent. The tent breathed like a chest that had decided not to cough. She slid the second copy of her Descent into her notebook, behind the child's drawing. Paper against paper. 2 truths touching without argument. She keyed command one more time, to be the kind of echo the record could not misplace. Guardian to Overlord, for clarity, no fires at Bravo Blue without Guardian ground clear. Guardian will not issue clear until civilian sweep complete. The reply came flat. Clarity received. Execute window remains. She closed the notebook. The pen clip left a crescent in her palm where it always did, a small hurt that said she'd held on. Dalton settled his helmet. Vargas checked his sling. The tent light flickered once, then steadied. Clock's moving, Dalton said. So are we, Ellis answered. Not fast. Right. They stepped into the corridor air, cooler than the tent by a degree that felt like truth. Somewhere beyond the wire, a muezzin cleared his throat. Rain strung silver between rooftops. The reaper's far-off whine combed the sky flat. Captain Mara Ellis felt the alley tighten to the width of a stretcher and the clock wedge between each footfall. Overlord to Raven 2. Execute window T-60. Lacing grid Bravo Blue. A green, flicker-grazed stone. Laser wash skittering the roofline like a moth that knew the word final. Dalton's profile stayed carved. One hand on his radio, the other loose at his side as if not to spook the air. Ellis traced the evac lane with a last look. Trash cans shoved, crutches stacked. The bucket nudged 2 inches left so a gurney wouldn't kiss it and stall. Kareem hovered near the clinic door, small and non-threatening, a human permission slip. Positions, Dalton said on Team Net. Iceman covers bend. Vargas owns the lane, muzzles low near glass. The clinic breathed its familiar chorus. Generator thump, oxygen hiss, kettle click. Inside, the mother's shadow moved across the frosted pane. Work done by hands that didn't get to choose the hour. Overlord. Raven 2 confirm ready to execute. Dalton looked to Ellis. She could hear the decision in the way his boot settled. No scrape, all weight. She keyed command. Guardian to Overlord. Protected site active. Non-combatants present. Ground clearance not achieved. Guardian, CDE low. Execute remains. Her mouth tasted like pennies. The laser flicker paused on the wall where the scarfed man had idly rubbed grit earlier, then slid. Numbers loved clean surfaces. Ellis tapped Kareem's elbow. If I go in, you're my voice. Phrase on my mark only. He nodded, throat working once. She keyed Team Net. Raven 2, Guardian. I'm entering for ground confirmation. Friendly presence in grid. Dalton's jaw flexed. Copy. We hold. Vargas, you are a wall. Nothing gets past you but breath. The door latch gave under Ellis's glove with a damp click. She slipped inside and let the building swallow her kit's silhouette. Warm iodine and wool, the hiss louder, a metronome stitched to a small life. The child lay bundled to the chin, eyes bright wet glass. The mother watched Ellis's hands, not her rifle. Gray sky, Ellis began, and the mother's shoulders loosened before Kareem could finish. Green field. Understanding built a bridge with no nails. Overlord, T-30. Guardian status? Ellis moved to the rear corner where steam had once looked like a second person on the feed. It was a kettle set crooked on a camp burner, handle-wired so a tired hand wouldn't blister. She touched the oxygen line, felt the soft pulse of flow. Real civilians here and now, not probabilities. Her radio crackled to Team Net. Dalton, quiet as a hand on a dog's head. Doors ours, no push. She keyed command, voice calm by force. Guardian to Overlord. Friendlies inside protected site. Non-combatants confirmed. No clearance. Static. Then the steel. Record noted. Execute remains per hire. A laugh tried to rise and died. Sometimes language was a room with no doors. Ellis unfastened her helmet and let the room see a face before a uniform. She stepped between the window and the child. Body A, shudder. The child's breath rasped. The hiss stitched it steady. The mother held up an inhaler like a white flag. Ellis nodded and gestured. Go on. And the woman pressed. Slow. Practiced. She asks if the sky is safe, Kareem whispered. Ellis let the absurd grandeur of that land without irony. Tell her we're making a path. Tell her to listen for my words. Outside, boots repositioned just enough to mean readiness. Vargas's murmur carried through wood grain. Lane is clean. Overlord. Last call. Execute. She tasted the word and chewed it into something it couldn't be. Guardian. No clearance. Friendlies in grid. Each consonant an anchor. A pale green tremor crawled the ceiling, laser splash leaking through seams. Ellis stepped wider, shadow swallowing the line. She keyed Team Net. If the window remains, we move them. Kareem, the phrase on my call. Dalton, you own the street. Copy, he said. A beat. We're with you. Her plate carrier pressed her ribs. The child's ribs fluttered under a blanket. The building held its breath with them. She pictured the map's groove under her thumb, the one she'd carved writing Evac Lane, north, and felt the shape of it in her muscles. 4 strides to the bend. Bucket 2 inches left. Door that breathes. Overlord. Guardian, acknowledge execute. She thumbed transmit. and gave them the truth they kept trying to file into a different drawer. Guardian acknowledges your order and cannot comply. Protected site. Friendlies present. Non-combatants present. The words landed like a tool dropped on concrete. Small sound, large echo. The mother's eyes searched her face. The child's chest hitched, then steadied under the hiss. Ellis angled to the door. "On your word," Dalton breathed. "Not yet," she said. The room's noises braided, kettle tick, generator thump, oxygen stitch, and somewhere above it, the Reaper's saw faded a shade, the sky taking a breath of its own. Whether that meant anything or nothing, she didn't let herself name it. She eased back to the child, hand on the blanket, pressure enough to say present. The laser's tremor left the ceiling. Outside, a siren far off tested the night and gave up. The clinic settled an inch, like a tired animal making itself smaller. Ellis keyed command one more time, voice low, uncompromised. "Guardian, friendly presence maintained. No clearance possible." In the corridor, Kareem stood ready to crack the world open with 4 words if she asked. Not yet. First, hold. Night vision glow bled through the seams, turning the clinic's window into a green mouth that wanted to swallow light. The generator coughed. The oxygen machine kept time, a patient metronome refusing to hurry. Captain Mara Ellis unlatched her plate carrier and slid it onto the child's chest, the weight settling over fluttering ribs that moved like moth wings under. Cotton. Overlord to Raven 2. Execute. Splash window T-90. The voice filled the small room as if it belonged here. It didn't. Ellis stepped between the glass and the bed, shoulder touching flaking paint, boots planted where the rotted sill creaked. Kareem stood in the doorway with his hands low and open. The mother's knuckles were chalk white on the inhaler. Chief Dalton's shadow crossed the threshold and held. He didn't crowd her. He watched the window, the door, the space between choice and order. Ellis thumbed transmit. Guardian to Overlord. Friendlies inside protected site. Non-combatants present. No clearance. Static licked the edge of the reply. Guardian acknowledged. Execute remains per hire. She felt the old cold hand reach for her wrist, the one that pulled you toward doing something simply because clocks were loud. She let the cold touch and pass. The laser lick crawled across the ceiling, a pale bruise of light. She widened her stance, letting her shadow swallow it. "Captain?" Kareem whispered. Not doubt, a question whose answer would cost. She keyed Team Net. "Raven 2, Guardian. Hold fires, evac posture on my mark." Dalton's jaw flexed once. Then he lowered his mic toward his mouth, voice steady as a carpenter's line. "Raven 2 copies, Guardian. Holding, no fire." He toggled up to command without a seam. "Overlord, Raven 2 holding. Friendlies in grid, non-combatants present." There it was. The hinge turned. The air changed, a pressure finding a door it hadn't planned to use. The mother's breathing hitched and then steadied. The child's ribs lifted under Ellis's plate in small, brave waves. "Raven 2, acknowledged lawful order to execute," Overlord snapped, the steel trying to make echo into obedience. Dalton didn't raise his voice to meet it. "Raven 2 acknowledges receipt. Unable to comply. Friendlies and non-combatants in protected site." Ellis keyed command again, gave them a sentence that could live on paper without shame. Guardian concurs. Log decision at time hack. She looked at the boy and then at the glass. "Then log it," she said, softer for the people in the room. "Log me." Kareem translated the shape of her voice, not the words. The mother nodded, as if a ledger somewhere had just added a human line. Outside, the laser bloom blinked, faltered, went out. Somewhere overhead, the Reaper's distant saw thinned, as if a hand on a knob had eased it down a hair. Not a promise. A physics. Ellis angled to the door. "Kareem, our phrase." His voice was a thread that pulled precisely. Gray sky, green field. The mother moved like she had practiced it in her mind. Thermos capped, blanket tucked, a bag hooked by 2 fingers. Ellis lifted the child, the plate carrier slipping but staying where it needed to be. The weight settled into her biceps and along the tendon that had never quite healed right. She cataloged the pain and used it for balance. Overlord to Raven 2. Maintain position. Higher reviewing. The tone had changed. Less bark, more paperwork. "Copy maintain," Dalton said, eyes on the hall. On Team Net, he carved the corridor into parts. "Iceman, bend. Vargas, lane. We move on Guardian's push." Ellis took one step to test the floorboard's complaint, then another. The oxygen hiss seemed to follow them, a thin cord stretching down the hall. She hit the door first with her shoulder, the door that breathes, and felt the building give way, a patient exhale. Rain caught their faces like a net. The alley smelled of chlorine and wet bread. Vargas had already made the obstacles vanish. Trash cans squared, crutches lined to the left. He looked at the child, at Ellis, at the space he had carved for them, and then didn't look again. "Move," Dalton breathed. They flowed. 4 strides to the bend, bucket 2 inches left, the gurney rut avoided by memory. The mother's shoes slap whispered. Kareem's hand found the doorframe at the corner and pushed air aside for them. Somewhere beyond the lane, a siren tested itself and quit. "Overlord. Guardian, confirm your status." Ellis kept her voice flat. "Exfil non-combatants via rear alley northbound. Friendlies remain in grid. No clearance." A shout pinballed down stone from the far street. Language too far to parse. Urgency easy to read. Boots scuffed somewhere beyond the bend. Dalton's head angled, the way men listen with bone. "Contact," Vargas murmured. "Not yet," Ellis said. "Noise first." Thunder answered from a cloud that had been waiting all night. The crack rode the alley and rattled glass. The child startled, the plate shifted. Ellis pressed and the ribs settled. Moth wings steady again. The evac lane opened into the wider street. Night air cooler by a degree. A cart sat skewed. A rope lay like a question. Kareem lifted it with 2 fingers. The mother moved past, small and decisive. Dalton toggled command. "Overlord, be advised. Evacuation of civilians underway. Raven 2 maintains hold." "Copy." The word dragged, as if it had to drag pride with it. "Copy, Raven 2. Strike aborted for grid Bravo Blue pending higher review." Wave off. The word no one said, but all heard. Ellis let it land and pass. The night wasn't finished inventing costs. They reached the mouth of the lane. Ellis set the child into the mother's arms. The plate carrier sliding free like a borrowed promise returned. The mother touched Ellis's sleeve once. 2 fingers, quick, a blessing or an anchor. Boots thudded closer now. Rubber on wet stone, rhythm wrong for a patrol and too right for a crowd. Dalton's chin cut toward the sound. "We have company." Ellis nodded, turned back down the lane that smelled like iodine and rain. "Then we hold this door," she said, and stepped back, into the clinic, into the space her shadow had already taught her to own. The first crack came thin and flat, rubber on wet stone or a rifle too far to name. Plaster ticked Ellis's sleeve. The window breathed dust and went still. The oxygen hiss kept its patient time like it had no idea men invented clocks. "Contact?" Vargas whispered from the bend. Noise only, Ellis said. Her tongue tasted of metal and chalk. We move. A second report answered from the far street nearer now. The clinic's hallway compressed to the width of one decision. The nurse and an old man with gauze waited by the door, eyes on Ellis's hands, not her rifle. She keyed Team Net. Raven 2, Guardian. Smoke on my mark. Evac first. Return fire only with clear muzzle source. Dalton. Copy. Movement before muzzle. Iceman, can up. Vargas, hold lane. Iceman thumbed a spoon and kissed a smoke can to the floor. It rolled, clinked, and bloomed white that turned the rain into milk. The hallway filled with a smell like hot sugar and matches. The nurse flinched. Ellis put the plate carrier back on, then slipped the old man's arm across her shoulders. He weighed less than the air wanted. Kareem, phrase, she said. Gray sky, green field, he called, voice a thread that pulled the corridor forward. A shot found stone and spat grit. The nurse gasped. Ellis counted 1 breath, 2, 3, not bullets, breaths. Go, she said, and the group moved, feet whispering over puddled tile, smoke finger-combing the air into blindness. They hit the door that breathes. It exhaled into rain. Vargas stood in the lane, tall against milk-white drift, rifle low, eyes everywhere. Lane holds, he said. Raven 2, this is Overlord, report contact. Dalton toggled calm. Probing fire unknown, Civ evac underway, holding fire per ROE. Roger, a beat. Update HVT status. Ellis swallowed the word and kept moving. The old man's shoes slid. Her knee found a rut and corrected. Iceman bend, Dalton murmured. Vargas, you're my wall. Another crack, closer, meaner, a splash where a bullet had argued with a puddle. Muzzle? Ellis asked. Negative, Vargas said, voice steady. Echoes only. The smoke thinned at the bend. Ellis saw the bucket she'd moved 2 inches left, because memory had asked her to. She led the old man past, shoulder brushing the cold rim, then handed him to Kareem, who became a ramp of words and hands. The nurse followed, braid dark with mist, thermos clamped in one fist like a mission. A shape wavered at the lane mouth, man or tarp or rumor. Vargas didn't lift the barrel. Show me the gun, he breathed to the ghost. It didn't. Overlord, Guardian, confirm you are returning fire. Ellis keyed command. Negative. Return fire withheld absent muzzle source. Civilians moving. Copy. Quieter this time. The kind of quiet that meant a pen paused above paper. A new sound ripped the smoke. A motorbike's cough knifing wrong through the alley. Iceman leaned into cover. 2 up, he said. No lights. Ellis felt the urge to fill the lane with noise. She stapled it to the wall. Hold, she said. Let the smoke speak. The bikes faltered. One clipped a can and skidded, metal protesting like a dropped pan. A curse floated, thick with nerves, not tactics. Footfalls scrambled backward. The lane breathed. Ellis pushed the nurse forward and checked the room one last time. Kettle cold, bedclothes thrown back, the corner where the scarfed man liked his chair still warm in her imagination only. Empty. Dalton's voice came in close. HVT? She shook once. Not here. He didn't say slipped. He didn't have to. What they saved and what they missed would share a ledger. Last 2, she said, and she and Iceman lifted the oxygen cylinder by its straps and moved it like a body you refused to drop. The hiss never broke. The machine kept its promise. They cleared the threshold. The door breathed out and closed, a patient that had learned to rest between storms. At the lane mouth, light smeared into the street and made silhouettes honest. A man with a rifle leaned around a corner, eager, reckless. The barrel kissed the line. Vargas's voice changed by a hair. Muzzle. Return, Ellis said. One disciplined pair, crack, crack, sent stone teeth from the wall near the rifleman's cheek. He reeled back behind cover, learned something about range and humility, and went silent. Overlord. Status. Dalton. Evac complete. Unknowns disengaging. No friendly casualties. Ellis handed the oxygen cylinder to the nurse, who took it with the gratitude of a person who had been handed the rest of a night. The old man lifted 2 fingers at Ellis. Neither salute nor prayer, something older. They flowed into the wider street. Rain cooled her face by a degree that meant alive. The smoke thinned to memory. Behind them, the blue cross swallowed the lane and became a quiet square again. Dalton matched her stride. You good? I'm counting breaths, she said. He nodded as if that were a report that could be typed. Copy. Kareem touched his sleeve. The mother is safe, he said. She asked your name. Ellis flexed her fingers, the pen-clip crescent still etched into her palm. Tell her Mara, she said. Tell her the lane is there tomorrow. Sirens tested the far blocks and gave up. The clinic's hiss became a memory she chose to keep. Overlord to Raven 2. Hold grid. Hire wants a sweep. Dalton's eyes met hers. We hold the door, he said. We always did, she answered. The debrief room was the color of decisions no one celebrates. Flat walls, a metal table that made mugs sound like gavel taps. Fluorescence hummed a fraction out of tune. Captain Mara Ellis sat with her notebook closed, pen clip printing its crescent into her palm like it had a right to. A major with careful hair arranged pages into tidy stacks. A legal officer clicked a pen without writing. The recorder's red eye stared, patient. Chief Dalton leaned against the back wall. Not quite a shadow, not quite permission. Vargas waited in the hall with 2 paper cups that smelled like burnt patience. Captain Ellis, the major began, voice draped in courtesy. Acknowledge that you received a lawful execute order. I received it, she said, and that you failed to comply. She let a breath settle dust no one could see. I withheld ground clearance at a protected medical site with non-combatants present and friendly forces in grid, per ROE. She kept her voice even. Anger eats words. The legal officer's pen finally touched paper. Higher authorized strike within acceptable CDE. Numbers do not negate ROE at protected sites, she said. Positive identification remained unconfirmed. On-site civilian clearance was not achieved. The major leafed to a page as if it might disagree with itself. Chief Dalton transmitted Raven 2 holding. No fire. Was that at your direction? Dalton spoke before she could. At mine, sir, aligned to the captain's ground clear requirement and friendly presence. My call. The major's eyes didn't move to him. Captain. Ellis kept her gaze on the space between the stapler and the mug ring. I stated on command net, no clearance. I accept responsibility for my words. The recorder blinked twice like a heartbeat. The legal officer slid a single page across the table. Memorandum of censure. Acknowledges receipt of execute order and your refusal to comply. Space for comment. Ellis read the paragraph. Its language had the chill of something that lived mostly indoors. She took the pen. The room shifted a half-degree cooler. She signed where her name belonged, then turned the page and wrote 3 lines in the space that asked her to soften herself. Protected site. No PID. Non-combatants present. Friendlies in grid. ROE Annex K invoked. I will not issue clear in those conditions. I accept censure. The pen rasped. Ink flashed dull in the fluorescent buzz, then sank into the fiber like rain into good soil. The major cleared his throat. Higher will review your descent alongside the after-action. There is concern that your posture allowed target escape. Possibly, she said. The word was a bridge she could stand on. We evacuated civilians alive. Record shows no friendly or civilian casualties at the site. The legal officer's pen clicked again. You're aware this may impact your billet? I'm aware, she said. Her chest felt both tight and clean. The major stacked papers with the precision of someone building a small wall. Your recommendation is temporary removal from outside the wire taskings pending review. Dalton's jaw flexed, but stayed quiet. Ellis nodded once. Understood. The door opened to let the silence out. In the corridor's draft, paper smelled briefly like the tent at midnight. Vargas handed her one of the cups. Hot, he warned. It wasn't. Kareem waited near the admin desk, hands folded as if he could warm them on news. The mother is safe, he said, voice low. The child slept. He didn't ask for her name again. He already had it. The admin clerk, ink on fingers, eyes bored on purpose, stamped the censure with the time hack, then slid a second sheet across. For your records, he said, like a shopkeeper passing a receipt for something no one wanted to buy. Ellis tucked the copy into her notebook behind the child's drawing and the dissent she'd printed. Paper against paper. 2 truths touching, then 3. In the doorway, Dalton stopped her with a chin lift. Higher will sand this down, he said. They always do. Let them, she said. Sand leaves shape. He almost smiled. Raven too would work with you again. That's not your call. It never was, he said. We'd still do it. She stepped outside into air that smelled like wet canvas and new diesel. Rain had rinsed the horizon a cleaner color. A truck backfired in the motor pool and she didn't flinch. The Penclips crescent was still in her palm. She pressed it deeper, held for a count, and let go. Back in the admin corridor, a voice read from a draft, too loud and too careful. Proposed language about pre-strike on-site civilian sweep near protected infrastructure. Not policy, not yet. Just ink thinking about becoming bone. Ellis didn't turn. She already knew what it would say when it finally decided to exist. She walked the line of drying boots. Somewhere, a kettle clicked off in a room she wasn't allowed to see. The sky over Guardian cracked to pale, and the night that had demanded her name started to let it go. The conference room smelled like toner and wet wool. A colonel in a rain-dark blouse stood at the head of the table, knuckles pale on a binder. The pages inside had tabs the color of traffic lights. Fluorescence hummed. The projector idled, a square of nothing waiting to become law. Captain Mara Ellis kept her hands flat on the table edge, the pen clip cold against her palm, the crescent scar pressed white. Chief Dalton sat down the row, posture at ease by discipline, not comfort. Vargas hovered near the door, a spare chair with his name on it, and no intention of sitting. Kareem stood against the wall with the quiet of a man who knows rooms like this speak in weather fronts, not words. The colonel cleared his throat. Annex K, updates, he said, voice level, the way you read a recipe after the meal is already cooking. He flipped a tab. Effective. Immediately, pre-strike on-site civilian sweep required within designated radius of protected medical infrastructure. Ground element clear, mandatory, prior to fires. Presence of friendly forces in-grid cancels authority. Command and ISR shall not substitute probability for PID. No one clapped. Paper doesn't ask for it. Ellis felt the words land in the room like sandbags placed where water had already proved it would rise. Something in her chest loosened a notch she hadn't allowed all day. The colonel kept reading, cadence steady, implementation notes, training requirements, language braided for lawyers and lieutenants. Questions? He asked. Chairs creaked, boots shifted. A major scribbled a note for the sake of having a note. Dalton didn't look at her. He reached for the pen on his pad and drew a small rectangle, 2 lines, then a third, a door that breathes, and shut the cap. The colonel slid acknowledgement forms down the table, paper whispering over wood. Sign for receipt. Ellis took hers. The ink smelled like warm plastic. She read each line, though she knew them by heart already. Muscle memory wanted the truth to pass through her body before she gave it back. At the bottom, she signed, Mara Ellis, Capt, USMC. The letters settled like a pack set down after a march. In the corridor, the admin clerk with ink on his fingers stamped the page. Time, date, a sound, like a small gate shutting on a mean dog. Copy for your records, ma'am, he said. He didn't meet her eyes. He didn't need to. She slid the copy into her notebook behind the dissent, behind the child's drawing, paper against paper, ledger, promise, picture, thin armor stacked. A captain from S3 intercepted her with a polite smile that never reached his eyes. Temporary removal from outside the wire tasks stands pending review, he said. We appreciate your professionalism. The word appreciate arrived like a coin tossed toward a busker. Understood, she said. The pen clip bit her palm. The pain filed the moment into something she could carry without venom. Dalton caught up with her by the map wall where roots glowed under acetate. He kept his voice for her alone. Raven 2 sent the 1972, he said. She raised an eyebrow. Message traffic that skirts a request, he translated, almost smiling. He pulled a folded file card from his sleeve pocket. On it, block letters, Raven 2 requests Guardian Liaison for Civ Pro, RO clearance, attached Capt Ellis if available. The card was the size of a hand and weighed more than paper. Ellis read it twice, the way you read a name you don't expect to see on a door. Her stomach did the small lift of a bird, deciding the branch would hold. Your billet? Dalton asked. Frozen, she said. He nodded, unsurprised. We'll work the seams. She glanced past him at the big map, the valley's thin vein of road, the blue cross someone had added with a grease pencil and never erased. This won't carry my name, she said. Don't need it, he said. We just need the lane. Rain ticked the window. Somewhere on the compound, a kettle clicked off. The noise walked through her like memory returning to its chair. She flipped open her notebook and pressed her thumb to the groove she had carved days ago. Evac Lane, North, the paper smooth now, worn by use. She felt the grit under her glove anyway. Phantom texture you learn to trust. Kareem stepped out of the conference room with a form of his own, translation training attendance, boxes empty. He looked at her, at the card in Dalton's hand, at the map's blue cross. Will you go back? He asked. She watched the corridor breathe. To the left, briefing rooms. To the right, the motor pool and the rain beyond. The answer set itself without drama. If they'll have me, she said. If the door still breathes. Dalton folded the card once, then twice, and slid it into her notebook like a marker. Wheels up when they stop pretending this was routine, he said. She almost smiled. They'll pretend for a while. Then we wait loud enough to be heard without speaking, he said. The corridor smelled of canvas and ink and the thin sweetness of copier toner. She closed the notebook. Paper armor stacked, The policy would outlive tonight. That was the shape she had wanted. Pre-dawn pressed a gray coin of light against the flight line. JP-8 hung in the air with rain and the sweetness of wet cardboard. A CH-47 idled 2 pads over, rotor wash lifting the edges of tarp bundles as if checking their pulse. Captain Mara Ellis sat on a scarred aluminum bench beside the wash rack, notebook open on her thigh, pen clip cold against her palm. The admin corridor behind her had given her nothing new. Billet still frozen, review still ongoing. The clerk with ink on his fingers had stamped another acknowledgement that said everything and nothing. She'd walked out into the weather where things remembered what they were. Inside the notebook, she laid out the thin stack she'd kept like armor. The ROE descent, the censure, Raven 2's file card, requests guardian liaison, and the child's drawing. Stick figures under a crooked sun, graphite lines dark where a small hand pressed hard. The paper had picked up a smear of iodine at one corner. It smelled faintly of disinfectant when the wind leaned the right way. Her phone buzzed with a message she didn't check. She took a strip of dull green tape from her pocket, tore it with her teeth, and fixed the drawing to the inside cover along its top edge so it could lift and breathe like a door on a soft hinge. Thunder muttered somewhere to the west. A kettle clicked off in the chow tent behind her. The sound traveled exactly the way it had in the clinic. She flattened the strip and pressed until the glue warmed under her thumb. Then log it, she heard herself say, too quiet for anyone but the bench. The words landed where she'd first put them, between a window and a boy's ribs, then belonged here too. She added the second half, a breath later, the vow in its smallest, sharpest shape. Log me. The CH-47 spooled higher. The bench trembled. She turned a page and traced the groove she'd carved days ago, Evac Lane, north, feeling phantom grit where the paper had gone smooth with handling. Beneath it, she wrote in block letters that looked like rock. Remember before you decide. Not poetry, procedure. Boots scuffed. Chief Dalton appeared at the edge of the wash rack, rain beating on his blouse. He didn't sit. He let the rotor wash rake one side of him and kept his voice at a level the wind wouldn't push around. They'll pretend this was routine a little longer, he said. I know. He glanced at the notebook, saw the drawing without staring. Raven wants you when they unfreeze you. Card still stands. She slid the card under the drawing like a page marker, paper on paper. Copy. He shifted weight. A man about to say something and deciding not to. We'll keep a seat open, he said instead, and ghosted back toward the pad. The rain came finer, the kind that wet everything equally. She closed the notebook and felt the thickness of the cover change, the way a thing changes when it owns a memory it didn't before. The pen clip left its crescent in her palm when she squeezed. The small pain organized the rest. A supply truck rattled past with cases of saline. The driver lifted 2 fingers from the wheel in a salute that wasn't a salute. Ellis returned it with a chin, then stood and shouldered her pack. The idling rotor made the whole pad thrum. The vibration climbed her boots and settled somewhere behind her ribs where the plate carrier had pressed not long ago. Orders would come the way they always came. Too late, too conditional, at a slant. She would go when they allowed, and until then she would make ready without noise. Checklists, maps, the small logistics of mercy. She tucked the notebook into her cargo pocket, the cover warm briefly against her leg, the taped edge catching once on the fabric like a reminder with corners. On the horizon, the cloud deck broke enough to show a pale seam of ordinary morning. She tasted rain and metal and coffee not yet poured. The kettle's ghost click faded. Somewhere in the compound, a printer stamped a time into paper, a small sound like a gate closing on the night they had survived. She walked back toward the corridor that smelled of canvas, ink, and copier ozone. At the door, she paused and looked at the pad one last time. The tarps lifting, the rotors turning, the day starting whether anyone deserved it or not. Quiet fortitude is a habit. She tightened the strap on her pack and went to keep it. The rains thinned with the season, and the air over Ashara held the clean, metallic bite of tools left out to dry. Weeks later, when orders finally loosened and the billet unfroze, Mara rode back into the valley in the bench seat of a heaving MRAP, the notebook warm in her cargo pocket. The child's drawing ticked the inside of the cover with each rut like a heartbeat. Raven, too, moved with the same unshowy grace. Dalton's chin cut to angles, Vargas counting doorways without letting his rifle make introductions, Iceman listening to the air. The route smelled of diesel and cumin and the quiet heat that follows hard rain. The new ROE sat in the net like a leveled bubble. Pre-strike on-site sweep, ground clear mandatory, friendlies cancel fires. Words that wouldn't bleed if someone squeezed them. They rolled past a schoolhouse mural faded to chalk ghosts, a pharmacy with its shutter open half a palm, a clinic with a white hand-painted cross instead of the blue. The generator here had a different cough, higher and less certain. The alley wasn't theirs yet. It would have to be made. Market grid, clinic spiking foot traffic, Iceman murmured, nodding toward a doorway where two women bartered worry for salve. ISR buzzed in the team net, the Reaper afar, clean saw that could be anything you told it to be. Annex K in effect, Dalton said. Ground clear before anyone says fire. Copy, Mara answered, and felt the line settle around her like a harness that fit. She lifted a palm to a knot of boys, whose gaze skipped between rifles and the white cross, then stooped to clear a rusted milk crate from the rear alley with a gloved hand. 30 inches. She didn't measure with a tape. She measured with the way a gurney fights a corner and the way breath sounds when a building drags it through. Inside, the clinic smelled of boiled rice and bleach, same as anywhere people try to turn time into air. The nurse here wore green plastic sandals and a stern gentleness. She studied Mara's face first, then the rank, a calibration done without fuss. Kareem's words threaded the room, the new code phrase braided to the old shape. Gray sky, green field. The nurse repeated it carefully like a small, hard lesson. A child coughed from behind a curtained cot. The oxygen line hummed a note that steadied the room. On command net, a watch officer's voice arrived clipped and useful. Pattern on HVT near your grid, CDE low, awaiting ground clear. Guardian copies, Mara said. She glanced at the doorframe where someone had etched dates with a knife point. Appointments turned into dents. Dalton's silhouette filled the entrance without pressing it. Vargas slid a trash can 2 inches the way habit taught him. Iceman drew smoke from a pouch and let it ride the thought. Not the air. A man limped past the window, right hand bandaged, gait uneven enough to make rumor breathe. The thermal would make that look like meaning. The alley would make it honest. The man kept, going toward a tea stall where a boy with a crooked cap sold steam for coins. Not their night, not a target, just a person with a hand that hurt. Mara keyed the mic. Guardian to Overlord, civilians in protected site. Evac lane staged, no PID, no clear. Copy, the watch officer said, and the word carried less pride than relief. The net stayed calm. The saw held its distance. The clinic kept its promise. She moved through the small rooms, touching frames with her eyes. A kettle ticked. Somebody had wired the handle with patience, A poster flapped, corners clogged with tape, lungs drawn like leaves. The nurse tugged a curtain and let the outside air kiss the stale corners. The building breathed around them because they let it. On the way out, a little girl in a yellow sweater, too thin for the season, stared, and then decided to be brave on purpose. She lifted a hand, palm open. Mara lowered hers until glove met small skin for a fraction. Nothing to write, and everything to remember. The girl grinned with her whole face, and the grin became a noise in the room, like cutlery settling after the kettle clicks off. Back in the alley, Dalton gave her the question with his eyebrows. She gave him the answer with a tilt of her chin. The team flowed the way water learns a ditch. The world didn't change its shape. They changed how it met the corners. Weeks later, the night that had asked for insubordination turned into a footnote with the language sanded smooth. The censure sat where she'd left it in the notebook, thinner with rereads. Policy carried no names. The drawing carried 2 stick figures and a crooked sun, and enough graphite pressure to make meaning heavier than paper. When the anger tried to rehearse itself, she let it go like a breath held too long. Relief, not triumph, not vindication, settled into the edges of her kit like weight you learn to carry without noticing. She wrote 3 more words under the groove she'd carved for the evac lane. Ask, then act. Not a motto, a sequence. Duty first, but not alone. Compassion first, but not unarmed. In her head, the sentence finished itself in a grammar she trusted. Duty without mercy is a map without terrain. Mercy without duty is a promise you can't keep. When clocks got loud, she put her body where her values were. When orders pressed, she pressed back with process and presence. The message didn't require speeches, only work. Remember before you decide. Move people before you move force. Log what you are willing to be crushed for. The rest, applause, rank, rumor, arrived on its own schedule and mattered less than a kettle's click in a room that breathed. She closed the notebook. The tape along the drawing's edge caught on her glove and lifted a millimeter, the paper flexing like a door that still knew how to open. She smoothed it down with 2 fingers and felt the grit of graphite through the cover. Somewhere beyond the wall, a child's cough lost its hitch mid-breath. Somewhere up in the sky, a drone's engine receded a degree. The day turned over. The habit held. Quiet fortitude didn't ask to be seen. It asked to be done.